Hello and welcome to the MindCep Podcast. This is your host, Alex Muir, helping you flex your mind, body, and soul. In today's episode 64, we're going to be speaking with Zack Schreier. And please welcome Zack Schreier to the podcast.
And this episode is brought to you by RadioGuestList.com, the #1 free radio guest, podcast, and talk show guest expert interview booking service on the internet.
Disclaimer. All information provided by Alex Muir is of general nature and is spoken from Alex Muir's and his guests' personal experiences and personal opinions on the topics related to fitness, health, and education only. No information is to be taken as medical or other health advice pertaining to any specific health or medical condition. You agree that use of this information is at your own risk and hold Alex Muir harmless from any and all losses, liabilities, injuries, or damages resulting from any and all claims.
And we're live. Welcome to the MindCep Podcast. This is your host, Alex Muir, helping you flex your mind, body, and soul. And today's episode 64, we're going to be speaking with Zack Schreier. Zack is a serial entrepreneur who started his first business in high school. He then co-founded Quevos as a freshman in college. Quevos is a category-leading CPG company that pioneered the development of healthy chips made from egg whites. Zack appeared on ABC's Shark Tank in 2021 and secured an investment from Daniel Lebetsky, the founder of Kind Bars. His true passions are health and philosophy, and he co-founded LifeStacks to bring his vision for healthy, high-performance living to the market. And please welcome Zack Schreier to the podcast. Zack, pleasure to have you on the MindCep Podcast this morning, or this afternoon, probably for you. And I'm really excited to have you on, and welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alex. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. So one thing I wanted to start off by saying, Zack, is as MindCep's all about helping our audience, our individuals, men and women, optimize themselves mentally and physically, right, to be in a better high performance state for the work that they do, whether that be in their career and business or their relationships, just how to make those connections better, how to communicate better. All of that really comes down to, again, how we, the information that we put into our minds, and then the nutrition that we put into our bodies. So one thing that I want to mention was, to start off, is why don't we talk a little bit about your journey with type 1 diabetes? I was doing a little background research before the podcast, and I saw that you got type 1 diabetes and have had it since age 11. So why don't you take us through how your journey's been, and kind of what you've had to overcome, with nutrition and stuff like that, and tweaks that you've had to make to be able to better optimize your health.
Sure thing. Yeah. Well, I love that dichotomy you laid out between information in the mind and then nutrition in the body. I'm a frameworks guy, and I like to think about how to understand the different inputs to every single system that we care about. So,
Yeah.
I treat our performance as a capacity that can be optimized. And as you mentioned, nutrition, information, and then all the other lifestyle choices we make definitely input to just the way you feel and then the way you can perform every day. And as you mentioned, diabetes definitely taught me or started to teach me that lesson. So I was diagnosed with diabetes in 6th grade. And basically, as soon as you get that diagnosis, everything changes. You have to start doing what your pancreas was previously doing. It's specifically the insulin regulation side of things. So essentially, a regular person is consuming carbs, and then those carbs get deposited into the bloodstream as glucose, and then their pancreas basically releases the amount of insulin that's necessary to take that glucose into the cells. But in my case, basically, I was still eating my carbs. They were still getting deposited into the bloodstream, but then there wasn't the insulin there to basically shuttle those carbs into the cells. And the reason for that is actually that the immune system goes and attacks the insulin-producing cells in the pancreas. So basically, what that meant is that I became in charge of dosing the amount of insulin that's necessary to take those carbs into the cells, and that's actually a full-time job. It's not easy. Every single carb you eat has an effect, and even things that aren't even eating, like exercise and sleep and stress, all those things have an effect. So I was basically put into the middle of this sort of self-regulation experiment against my will. But I think from there I started to get into kind of like the body as a system, as a homeostatic system, and really try to understand how I could intervene on my health and my life to make all those things go more smoothly. And part of that is to avoid the complications that happen with diabetes. Another part of it is basically just because I care about my performance. I wanted to be sharp. I wanted to be physically active and healthy. I wanted to feel good. And so to do all that, I had to really take my health into my own hands.
No, absolutely. And like, having that sort of health ailment, type 1 diabetes, right? Like you really have to be regimented with the way that you eat food and when you consume food. It's everything's time, got to be specific times during the day. So, one other thing I wanted to mention was how did or how did you come across or discover maybe early on or later on intermittent fasting and how that helped you specifically with your type 1 diabetes?
Yeah, sure thing. So, as I mentioned, the carbs that you eat are an influence on your blood sugar, of course. And so, fasting basically allows you to not have that kind of interference from carbs. So,
Right.
during the fasting window, basically it all comes down to whether I've got my basal insulin rate. So there's sort of two kinds of ways of thinking about insulin dosing that you need. One is an ongoing stream of low amount of insulin, and the other is boluses, so larger amounts that correspond to the carbs that you're eating. So when you're fasting, you just have to worry about the basal rate, and if you can get that basal rate to match the basically the amount of carbs that your liver is releasing into the bloodstream, then you can stay really perfectly flat. The other thing about fasting is that it actually lets you drop your basal rates over time. So the longer you've been fasted, the more sort of glycogen depleted you are, the less sugar you're actually releasing into the bloodstream, and usually the more insulin sensitive you are. So that basically lets you drop your insulin, and that's kind of like a holy grail of like this kind of like repair in the body and fat utilization. So I imagine your audience has heard a lot about health experts talking about insulin recently, and basically when you've got insulin that's present in the bloodstream, it basically tells your body to store the fat that it has on its like already stored, and to use the energy that's coming in for its fuel. And when your insulin's low, it basically releases the fat that you have stored to use as fuel. And so it's your body's own way of regulating the energy balance, essentially. And so one of the goals of fasting is to liberate those those fat stores and use them as fuel, because you gotta, in order to lose weight, you have to, or to even to maintain weight, you have to oscillate between intake and then utilization of the energy that you have.
Yeah.
So fasting has been great for that, basically just keeping me pretty flat, and also enabling me to actually do less insulin over time. But then, of course, the other thing to keep in mind is that you can't always fast. We need food.
Yeah.
It's not only
Yeah.
essential as an energy substrate, but also because it provides essential nutrients, and our bodies are obviously made of food. So, basically, there's just some considerations when you transition from the fasting window to the feeding window that especially type 1 diabetics should be attentive to. But I think there's probably some general lessons here too. So, the biggest thing is that your body's going to pretty quickly start to use that energy that you're taking in. And so in my case, that means if I'm having some carbs, they're going to very quickly enter the bloodstream, and I'm going to see a sugar spike. So I
Yeah.
have to be preemptively, basically considerate about that as I'm going to break my fast. Usually I'll do insulin before I break the fast, in anticipation of the carbs that are coming into the bloodstream. And then I'll also buffer my first meal with fiber and fat and protein. And that basically lets the whole digestive process go a little slower. And it means I'm not going to see that huge spike that I would if I just had straight carb.
Okay. Yeah. Because I was wondering, like, when you break your fast, because one thing that I've always struggled with, which, maybe our audience can relate to as well, is like I've done well at I've experimented with intermittent fasting since I'd say 2016, where I would do, I would maybe do the 16-hour fast, 8-hour eating window, and then I got to the point where I could do like a full day, and I would just do like electrolyte drink mix, coffee, tea, and then some sea salt, like pink Himalayan sea salt, which helped a lot. Because you get, sometimes you can get really bad headaches, right? If we're prolonging the fast and because you get so dehydrated. So when I would break my fast, I would eat way too much, right? Because it puts so much strain on the body already. It's like, right, we're causing that physical stress on the body with doing the intermittent fasting. So when I would break my fast, the portions would be way too big. So it put a lot of extra strain on my digestive system, I feel like. So it's good to know about yeah, like how you break your fast, right? It's super important because our stomach shrinks so much fasting, right? And by the time we break our fast, we need some, like when I went to the doctor last, I was like, hey, I've been having issues with my digestion. This is what's been going on. He's like, oh, you gotta either cut out fasting or really reduce your first meal upon breaking your fast, like the portion size, because if your portion size is too large, it just puts too much strain on your digestion. So that's good to know about eating like fiber, fat, and protein for like your first meal, like breaking the fast.
Yeah, for sure. And usually protein and fat don't themselves have like fiber. The exception would be like nuts, like
Yeah,
pistachios, for example, are like, you've got like in any serving, you got like 6 grams of protein and 5 net carbs and 3 grams of fiber. And so, and some good fat too. So that, that's a good way to break something like that. But you could also do like just a protein meal with fat, of course, and then also have some fiber alongside that. Like, you could have just some palatable fiber source in a drink mix right before you go ahead and have that meal. That's a nice way to do it. But yeah, no, I totally hear what you're saying about that first meal being too big after a long fast. There's actually something called refeeding syndrome, and that's applicable to longer fasts especially, but it can be actually dangerous to have too much food after you've been fasting for a long time.
yeah,
Um, Other thing to keep in mind, Andrew Huberman talks good about this idea of nutrient sensing. And so, basically our bodies are smart, and they stop, the hunger signals that we experience are responsive to the nutrients that our body needs. And so one of the things that your body really does want fairly consistently is protein. And so having protein as your first meal basically tells your body that, okay, we're in a fine spot. We've got some of the essential components that we need, and that actually will decrease your appetite. So that's a nice way to basically make sure that you're not going to overeat, is to start with the protein.
yeah.
And then there's also this, not only is there a sort of chemical nutrient sensing, like we just discussed with protein, but there's also a mechanical nutrient sensing. And I'm not sure this would be called nutrient sensing, but it's a sort of a mechanical signal for satiety. So actually, the fuller you are physically, like the more volume of food that you have in your gut, the less hungry you're going to be. And so we're all pretty familiar with that experience, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
when the stomach feels full, it's like, okay, I'm good now. And so fiber is great for that because it's a high volume, low calorie food. And the right proteins and fats can also be great there too.
And for fiber specifically, I know you talked about like trail mix, nuts, seeds, that kind of thing. Do you take any sort of like fiber supplement, like that you have, like let's say with like your protein powder, like protein smoothie or anything like that?
Yeah, I've done stuff like that. I used to really love psyllium husk
Oh
as I
yeah,
would break my fast. I think I started to get some sort of like mild allergy to it though, so I stopped using it.
right.
Now I'm experimenting with different things. Like one thing I have in the like hours before I'll break the fast officially is like one of these like prebiotic fiber sodas, and
Okay.
soda's probably the wrong term for it, but it's like I think my favorite brand, which is Olipop, calls themselves a new kind of soda. And basically, it's like high in prebiotic fiber. It's stevia sweetened. It's very low in sugar and calories. And so I love that. It's 9 grams of fiber, and it's just
Oh
such a
wow.
delicious, convenient way to have it. Some people can be a little responsive to inulin. Like it's not that it can be a little uncomfortable. But I tolerate it really well. So I love that as a pretty frequent occasion for me.
Right on. And going back to fasting, what what kind of supplements do you take during the fast, or do you not take any supplements during like a prolonged fast?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. My fasting is usually intermittent, so it's sort of a daily lifestyle choice that I make. I'm not
Yeah.
rigid about it, but now I'm pretty used to it. So I typically have my first meal in the early to mid afternoon, and then I kind of finish up around dinner time. And I haven't done an extremely long fast in a while. I've tried them before, and the real issue there is that the insulin needs can get so low that
Yeah.
it's sometimes unavoidable for your sugar to go low.
Yeah.
And so my first 3-day fast, I had to have like a few fruit snacks, like a day and a half into that, and
Oh yeah.
not that that's the end of the world, but I think for me, it's probably easier if I make it more of a lifestyle choice and not so much like this this extreme kind of intervention, because that just puts me
Yeah.
at more risk. But yeah, no, I'm glad you're asking about supplements for fasting, because I think especially for the intermittent fasting lifestyle, supplements could be a huge boon, like an adjunct to the lifestyle. There are certain supplements like the branched chain amino acids that you
Yeah.
absolutely should not have when you're fasting, because those will go ahead and disrupt the metabolic pathways that you're actually trying to support when you're fasting. So
Right.
namely, there's like a building pathway and like a breakdown pathway, like mTOR and AMPK I'm referring to. And in the presence of the right nutrients, your body thinks, okay, it's time to build new tissue, and put on muscle and that sort of thing. And so the branched chain amino acids are great for sending that signal, but it opposes the signal of clean out the cells, repair, and also utilize fat as fuel. So things like that. You should avoid protein in general during the fasting window. But
Yeah.
many supplements support the metabolic benefits of fasting and just make it easier mentally and physically. They make your performance higher during that fasted window. And so actually, my supplement company LifeStacks is very interested in developing supplements that are fasting friendly and even fasting supportive. So our first product is an MCT, which is a fasting friendly fat. It's ketogenic, so it basically it's used as a very quick fuel source and tells your body, okay, we've got fat that we can burn right away. And so you'll burn that MCT, and then it will shift you in general into a fat burning state. So it's a little sort of trick or tool for nudging the body towards those benefits that we're looking for when we're fasting. And then we also include a stack of nootropics. And we really like balance and repeatability. We're not trying to like push somebody over the edge and give them just a wicked like performance boost that they're going to pay for later. We really want to just basically support performance at its core by basically nourishing the mind and body. So we use ingredients like tyrosine and acetylcholine and taurine, which are supportive of neurotransmitter systems like the dopamine system and acetylcholine and GABA. And basically that suite of ingredients just pushes you into this high performance state that's also calm. And then in addition to that, we use adaptogens like ginseng, and we use a very special kind of ginseng that's fermented and pre-digested, and then rhodiola as well. And basically, the intent of the fact, and the one that our customers keep reporting to us, is like no afternoon crash. They feel good. They're on task. They're focused. And over time, people even report like improved mood and just sustained mental clarity. So yeah, we're loving the way people are responding to that product. It's an add to coffee. MCT is a great alternative to your typical like sort of creamer bases. It's vegan, it's keto, and it's also very tasty and creamy. So we're sort of going after the coffee creamer market, but with a really healthy and functional sort of alternative to your typical creamer.
Yeah, this is excellent, because I was like looking at it, right? Because I'm like, okay, like, because I saw like Quevos and the egg white chips, and I'm like, that's like, I've never heard of that before. That's such a neat idea, very unique. But then I'm like, oh, MCT, because again, this is an MCT powder, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right. It's MCT
yeah,
powder. So back to the fiber conversation, the way
yeah,
it's powderized is actually that you take the MCT oil and you basically mix it with acacia fiber. And so our
okay.
MCT is like 70% the pure C8, C10 oil and 30% acacia fiber, which is great for the stomach.
Awesome. So it's really helps with like the digestion during the fast, right? Keeps your digestion kind of like at bay.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, fiber is great during a fast. It means you're not getting a total gut reset, but alternatively, you're feeding the microbiome. The microbiome is then creating short chain fatty acids as a metabolite, and those end up fueling performance as well. So fiber during a fast can actually act as a kind of like healthy fat burning fuel, even though that's counterintuitive because it doesn't seem like it's fat at all, but it ends up as a byproduct producing a fat metabolite.
Because this your LifeStacks MCT, um I'm getting vibes like David Asprey, right? His bulletproof coffee, like, because nothing's come out since his bulletproof coffee, right? Where it's like the tablespoon of grass-fed butter, a tablespoon or two of the MCT oil. And there's this brand, because I'm from Canada, there's this brand called Nutiva. I think it's in the US as well, but basically it's the actual oil, but it's like unflavored. There's nothing else in it. And I was doing that for a while, because I'm like, you know what? I don't want to like doing a full like a like 16-hour fast, 8-hour eating window, but without like any sort of, right, like you said, fiber or anything like that. I was doing my best fasts when I was doing the bulletproof coffee, where I'd put the grass-fed butter and the MCT oil together in conjunction with the coffee, and then nothing else in it. Um, and it was working pretty well, but by the same time, I'm always looking for ways to, go back to fasting and just do it a little bit differently, right? So it's sustainable, because my biggest challenge has been the portion control. So, and making sure I don't overeat when I break the fast.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that you've had a good experience on Bulletproof. This is definitely in that vein. So
Yeah.
we are doing something similar. I think we're doing something better. Because we're not. It's not just the fat that's supporting performance. It's
Yeah.
also these nootropics and these adaptogens. And so Bulletproof is great. It makes you feel pretty good. But our stuff really actually puts you on task and makes you focused and sharp. So it's got the MCT and these other functional ingredients. But yeah, no, you're totally right. We were inspired by things like Bulletproof.
Yeah.
Actually, as I was formulating this product on the culinary side, so developing the flavor profiles and the creaminess, we looked at Nativa. Actually, a tip for your audience: if they're ever formulating food,
Yeah.
basically look at everything else that's comparable. Read every label you can, bring
Yeah.
stuff in, try it. Have your friends try it, and just kind of get a sense of what about that thing, how to move towards a more optimal flavor experience by actually just using the stuff that's available right now and comparing that to what you wish it was. So we took all these different MCT powders as inspiration, and then I think made something even more delicious.
Right on. Yeah. Like, I've never seen any flavors of the MCT powder like you have. Like the vanilla chocolate and hazelnut, like unreal. I'd love to have that in my coffee.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. That was the goal.
Yeah. So love the MCT powder, and again, like the Quevos egg white chips. That's like, those are some unreal products that you guys have come up with. So going back to the nootropics in there, this is the first that I've seen of the MCT powder, like you're saying, that has nootropics tied into it, and then those free form amino acids, right? Like the L-tyrosine, L-taurine, all that kind of stuff. Do you feel um like, by having those nootropics in there, that like you're saying, like your customers, like they feel a lot more like that, like that longer focus windows throughout the day, those peak
Absolutely.
states? Yeah.
For sure. Yes. It's we really designed it for the modern context. People are getting up, they're having their coffee, they are trying to get stuff done. They want to feel focused and motivated, but sometimes it's hard to feel totally focused and motivated on your to-do list. And typically what you see is people have another cup and then another cup and then another cup as the energy is waning from each cup. Because caffeine roughly peaks at the hour to 2 hour mark, and then by the 3 to 4 hour mark, you can sometimes expect to be crashing at that point.
Yeah.
Some people that are totally not, caffeine sensitive, they don't really experience the crash, but they don't really experience the energy boost either. It's kind of just baseline. And so, in our case, we're trying to really elevate people above baseline in a way that's sustainable. And so what we've heard from people is that they don't have the afternoon crash anymore when they take our stuff in the morning. And actually people are saying they need fewer cups of coffee as well, which is, coffee is great. But if you're having, 5 cups all
Yeah.
the way from the morning till the late afternoon, there's a good chance you're going to disrupt sleep, and it can be digestively disruptive also. So, we really wanted to pair caffeine with things that also work well alongside it for just a better performance and sort of an elevated state. And I think we achieved it with this formulation, and that's what our customers are saying too.
Right on. And another thing I wanted to mention was um intentionality. A lot of what you're saying about, like, the products, the way you guys design your products, right? You guys are the guinea pigs. You try, right, what's in the market first, and then you use that as inspiration. Do you feel like a big part of the LifeStacks brand is living with more intentionality? Because I know there's a lot of different, advice in the personal development space, or in whatever you're trying to create. Um, how did you guys differentiate yourselves at LifeStacks? Whilst, like, all these other companies and stuff are like saying, "Oh, it's got to be done this way." How did you get through those times when, like, everyone might have been questioning your ideas, or challenging the like, "Oh, I don't know if this will work," or
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we did this fairly incrementally, and each step of the way we got good feedback. So the first thing we did was actually create a capsule product. So we
Oh,
had, I guess I'll just sort of you're obviously familiar with many different nootropics. So we
yeah.
included acetyl L-carnitine, panax ginseng, rhodiola, theanine, coenzyme Q10, alpha lipoic acid, PQQ, NADH, actually a little bit of CBD as well.
Oh,
So
right
last
on.
year's nicolatus. So it was a really like pretty robust formulation that we had in the capsule, and people really liked it. Like they felt. I did mention citicoline. But people felt really focused and energized, and it was repeatable, which is always a goal of ours. But the biggest drawback was that it was a capsule, and people weren't, who are you guys making this capsule, and how do I know what's in it, and that sort of question. But after
Right.
people got over the hump, they really enjoyed it. And maybe the key piece of feedback that we got was, I love taking it with my coffee. And that made total sense to us because we were using balanced adaptogens, certain cholinergic ingredients, which are focusing, and then also theanine. And theanine and caffeine together are kind of the most popular nootropic combination. So, anyways, that gave us the insight. Okay, we can basically, kill two birds with one stone here. People love this with coffee, so let's put it into a coffee creamer. And also, people are skeptical of
Uh,
pills, and
yeah.
sort of not that eager to add a new pill to their life. So we upgraded the format and simultaneously made it much more intuitive. And then, actually, we were at Williams College at that point, and so we had about 100 students that were sort of following our journey and willing to, to try the coffee creamer through a few different iterations. And, as I mentioned already with sort of experimentation, this process was pretty arduous. So, we out of the maybe few hundred ingredients that we were familiar with, we had to find ones that were soluble, didn't taste terrible, basically, and worked well in coffee, because
Mhm.
we have to optimize for the consumption experience. And fortunately, those amino acids that I mentioned are quite tasteless, and we were familiar with those ingredients. The citicoline, ginseng, rhodiola aspect of the formulation, that's already something that was in our first product, in that capsule product. And so we knew that stack was, a really, really good one, especially to pair with coffee. And so we tested those ingredients individually for flavor and solubility properties. And the citicoline was fine. The rhodiola, it's got an earthy taste, but it can be incorporated well into flavor profiles. And the ginseng tasted like absolute garbage. So just like totally bitter, and really off-putting. So we had to really search around for a ginseng that was more, basically just had a better taste profile. Um, Fortunately, there we also found one that was even more effective and like a more premium ginseng. And so we use a patented fermented ginseng, that basically comes pre-digested, so that the absorption of the metabolites is better. And so you actually feel it sooner. It's a little more of a smooth onset, and also it dissolves and it tastes great. So, yeah, so we were, it was there maybe in a different possible universe. You can't get any nootropics that are effective and taste great and work well in coffee. But fortunately, we're in this world where we were able to find those great ingredients to pair with coffee. So that was a long process, and got to thank the Williams College kids for experimenting with us. And then we released a beta version of that product onto the market on Amazon, and sold through a few thousand units of basically the stack that we're currently using.
Mhm.
But it wasn't flavored like we're currently flavoring it. It was mildly sweet. It was mildly creamy. It was fine. People love the nootropic effect, but the most common report was, "Oh, this isn't a coffee creamer. This is a sweetener, but not a creamer." And so we, basically knew at that point that we got it right when it came to the effect profile, but not the flavor and texture profile. And so then we spent another sort of iteration, R&D process, iterating those aspects. And I'm pleased to say that we are finally at a really great place with the flavor and texture. So now I think it's basically the best thing you can add to your coffee.
That's awesome. Yeah. And again, like it all comes down to the experimentation and then beta testing with you guys started beta testing with like students at your college, which is amazing. That's a great way to um get good like direct feedback, right? From your potential customers. So that's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was crucial for us. You asked about differentiation, and I sort of walked through the steps of the process.
Yeah.
I guess what I would say is, we are I think rather than think about, how we can, do something slightly different and capture market share, we really think about how we can upgrade people's lives in ways that they're not thinking about right now. And so
Right.
since we started using these nootropic ingredients for ourselves, with friends, with family, we realized the benefits of these things. But we also discovered that most people wouldn't be inclined to add these ingredients to their lives in the capsule format, and they wouldn't be sourcing their own powders and all that stuff. And so we wanted to find a way to deliver great nootropics in a really convenient and intuitive way. And so I think that's really our main point of differentiation. We figured out how to upgrade your life in a way that is intuitive. So I think we're pretty differentiated in that way, but really it's not because we're thinking about the competition. We're thinking about the user.
Yeah. Right. Right. Really well
So,
said.
oh, thank you. Yeah. Well,
And then, yeah.
I was gonna say, I think the I've definitely discovered that uh, for me it's I like talking about LifeStacks and our brand and our thesis and all this stuff because I feel like we're actually doing the right thing by the customer, and so it's easy to just talk about the different things that we're doing. And I think that's sort of a general lesson. Like if you can just be a good actor, then you've got nothing to hide, and you can go ahead and market yourself and without feeling like you're having to lie or deliver canned messages or anything like that.
Yeah. Your customers speak on your behalf. You don't have to, because you made an amazing product, and it ties into their life, like you said, like very seamlessly. They don't have to, because of the ingredients within the product, right?
Yeah, exactly. Very seamless.
And one other thing I wanted to mention, for last question there for you there, Zach, is talking about like your type 1 diabetes and running, and how you utilize your running or long distance running to help keep the insulin sensitivity low, but also doing the fasting as well. So as far as your running, how have you do you normally do your runs in a fasted state as well, or would you break your fast, have your first meal, and then do your run like a little bit later in the day, or how have you been
Yeah,
doing that?
yeah. Nowadays, I typically do my runs fasted, and that makes me feel better because if I've got something jostling around in my stomach on a run, that's kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if I were to have a meal and then run 4 hours later, that would be fine. But that timing is difficult. So I like to do my runs kind of like late morning if I've got the time and the flexibility in my schedule, and then break my fast, when I get back from those runs. So sometimes I'm running it at 11 or noon. If I do a long run, it would usually be at like 11 or 11:30, and then by early afternoon, I'm coming back and having a meal pretty quickly. So I really like that. I actually view fasting and running as pretty similar interventions.
Hmm.
They're both going to sensitize your cells to insulin. They are, and what that means basically is that both of them are going to require a little preemptive adjustment. So you're going to want to make sure that you're not using too much insulin during those activities. And they're both also stressors. And I think we've been taught to view stress as a bad thing, but actually it's not binary. Stress, there's really like a dose response range to stress. So too little stress and you're not going to be stimulate your body to adapt. Too much stress and you're going to be overwhelmed and you're going to be fatigued. But there's a sweet spot kind of in the middle where you got a really healthy dose of stress that stimulates the body to get better, but without basically causing this breakdown and fatigue. So I think, as you're getting into running or getting into fasting or lifting or whatever it is, you want to make sure to be attentive to basically how your body's responding and give it an optimal dose. It's not about pushing hard every day. It's really about,
Yeah.
I sometimes have coached other runners. I like to say, especially during the base phase, let's take it, let's take it when we have it. Like if you're feeling good, go for it. If you're not, then just there's no reason to push through that. Because basically the more you can cooperate with your body, the better it's going to perform in the long run. The more we're sort of forcing it to comply with our wishes, the more it's going to degrade. So that's something to keep in mind for basically all these different stressors.
Yeah, yeah. And one other question for you. talking about the running, if you've been coaching another runner, and let's say they've had a long hiatus, they haven't like run seriously in the last few years, and they want to get back into it, would you recommend that they start getting back into running on like a treadmill and doing, right, just like getting to your kind of like baseline heart rate, and then cut it and then do that regularly, and maybe like every day or every second day to get their stamina back up? Or do you recommend that they go run like, off-road outdoors to get back into that running habit? Or how would you recommend someone that's taking a hiatus, getting back to it, but they're like, you know what, I want to get back into running. Like, how would you go about that?
Sure. Yeah. Even more than the terrain, I'd say the biggest thing is pace. So
Right.
people have the sense that it's not a real workout unless you're hurting or breathing hard, and I think basically the opposite's true for all. Not very useful if you just go at a hard clip and especially from the start, tire yourself out. We use intensity very selectively, so that's a harder efforts are like a twice a week thing for
Right.
advanced runners. So I'd say basically go at a pace that seems too slow to count as a workout, and that's a great place to start. Part of it is when you're fatiguing, your mechanics break down and you're more at risk of injury. So it's really important basically just to get your feet under you, get comfortable running again, get efficient again. And you can use drills and strides and things like that to kind of get a little taste of basically higher speed or higher end mechanics as you're mostly doing this easy, repeatable stuff. So, I think for a runner getting back into it, maybe, you find a level of training that's appropriate given their historical ability to handle training. So for most people that I've worked with, they're comfortable, even after a month's off, they're comfortable in the 20 to 30 mile per week range.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot of that is that they've been running since they were in high school. And that's kind of where they started the high school, and maybe even in college worked up to 60 to 80 miles a week. So if you take some time off, you can usually come back at a modest level like that. And then, so, we might do months of running in that range, relatively low volume, and then
Yeah.
slowly incorporate some higher end work. So maybe that would be some sprints a couple times a week, usually hill sprints. It could be a longer run with a slightly faster cadence. And basically, it's like a ratcheting up. So, we're always trying to get a stimulus, recover from it, get a little more stimulus, recover from it. It's never about just piling on the load, because that will take you nowhere but injury and burnout.
Yeah. No, I hear you on that. Well, that's all the time we got for today, Zach. But I definitely want to dive deeper on supplements in a future episode, and talking about history, our ancestral. I read about that too, our ancestral eating patterns, and how your passion for history and philosophy, how that's tied into how you've developed a framework for your own personal nutrition, but also helping clients, right, with utilizing building fasting, incorporating fasting into their lifestyle to incorporate more focus and personal energy throughout their days.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'd love to come back and talk with you about that stuff.
Yeah. And before we let you go today, where can our listeners find you? Where are you most active on? And how can they? I saw on your website that people can test before they buy that MCT powder, right?
Yep, that's right. So find us at lifestacks.com. That's lifestacks.com. And as Alex just mentioned, we're doing a try before you buy it offer. Basically, you can add to your cart. We'll ship it to you for free. And then if you like it, you keep it and pay. And if not, basically, we just won't charge you. No questions asked. And the thinking there is we know you're going to love it. So it's a win-win.
Right on. And what types of social media are you active on right now? Or like, how are you interacting with potential customers?
Yeah, mostly they come to the site and they chat with us, either via email, or we've got a chat feature on the website. We are LifeStacks does have a social account that's just up and coming. It's LifeStacks_performance. But personally, I'm not active on social. It's just a time sink for me. I do imagine that it's a good place to interact with an audience, but it's not my preferred way to engage with the world. So you won't find me there. But feel free to reach out to me personally. It's Zack, ZACK, at lifestacks.com.
Awesome. Appreciate your time today, Zach. And I'm going to be looking to post our podcast interview for this upcoming Wednesday, February 8th at 8 a.m. Pacific time.
Perfect. Okay, awesome.
Yeah. So as soon as I send you over the I'll aim to send you over the audio probably. Well, yeah, I'll have to send it over when it's published on Wednesday. But if it's all right with you, I can utilize the your photo there that Lydia sent me, and then I can also share a social media post for you to share with your audience on your website or however you guys choose to do that.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you
Awesome.
so much, Alex.
Yeah, appreciate your time today, Zach, and it's been a pleasure having you on the MindCep Podcast today.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Alex.
All right,
bye.
Bye for now.
I hope you enjoyed that special guest series episode brought to you by RadioGuestlist.com. If you enjoyed this podcast interview with myself and my guests, and you'd like to give me some feedback, please do so by leaving a short review on Apple Podcasts under MindCep Podcast. That's MindCep, the MindCep Podcast. On Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts. And I'll be happy to hear your feedback. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can do so as well on social media or on my blog. That's Alexander Muir, ALXANDER, Muir, M as in Mike, UIR.com. And thank you for listening, and see y'all next time.